Today's sermon is not one that I thought I would deliver. I say this not only because Jamila, who was supposed to be in the pulpit today, had to attend to her very ill father in Arizona this weekend, but because New Year sermons are theoretically very predictable. The New Year always looms large with possibilities. What a great feeling to be handed what feels like a clean slate to right the wrongs, if one is so inclined. The New Year holds some redemptive qualities and tickles the imagination with myriad threads of hope. But it's a different kind of hope than usual. Christmas sets the stage for a more ethereal hope by celebrating the potential of every child's birth. When lighting a candle to pierce the darkness, our spirit hopes to end the hostility that plagues the world. It inspires hope for peace and goodwill among all. And Easter, too, is all about hope in terms of the rebirth of spring and the promise inherent in planting seeds for later harvests. At least Unitarians like to give Easter a bit of a nature spin, that after the winter's frozen lifelessness, new life emerges, as surely as the natural code of the universe prepares the way for a new season of plantings and promise. New Year's, however, usually points to a hope in a more political context, and that a new calendar gives us the sense of actually doing things in a better and more productive way. Hope at New Year's spurs a new enthusiasm for trying to get life right this time, and a fresh 366 days just might help make that happen. A fresh calendar makes the heart feel a greater urgency about making changes or resolutions for bettering one's personal life, as well as incorporating change for the sake of the world. For example, we hope that this year we will finally reach a global accord to ensure environmental regulations. Or this is the year we will end war. Or this year nuclear weapons will be eradicated from the planet once and for all. Or this year, we will reduce homelessness and poverty and discrimination. So as a minister, I've always looked into this new year about, okay, what is it that we really hope to do? And so this first service in January has always been a way to inspire the congregation to see its way out of some political morass. I mean, I've spoken about the promise to end the Vietnam War, the promise to end the Persian Gulf War, the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War. I've addressed the need for human rights, environmental sustainability, corporate greed, all subject to change because the new year brought these incredibly great opportunities to change minds and hearts of all humankind. At least there was always the promise that that might happen. New Year's is when I take the world's pulse and try to determine what might be possible, where might we be headed, what work is there for me, what work is there for us to do. But when I approached this New Year's service in routine fashion, I was struck how enormously different it feels this year. Our world is unrecognizable today, more so than from any time that I can remember in my professional life. I see endless waves of discontentment, and they're not unique to any specific area or culture, but sending tremors throughout the world. I see 2012 as a year of many extraordinary changes, too complex or worrisome to even begin to understand. The only certainty for me in this radically changing world is that when we gather in January of next year, the politics, geography, and economics throughout the world as we presently know it will be radically altered after 2012 runs through its 366-day course. So today I offer more opinion than hope. But perhaps underneath my sputtering attempts in analyzing this complex world on the brink of profound change, perhaps hope somehow filters through the tumult impacting the entire world as we once knew it. Our reading this morning, a fable by Joseph Barnt, comes extremely close in identifying the state of our world today. A short recap. People in a certain kingdom were made happy by a happiness machine. As years and centuries wore on, the people who had access to the happiness machine became happier and happier, and they placed their troubled feelings into the machine, and the happiness purified them. But the residue of their troubles became dross, and the dross was dumped into a different part of the kingdom. But then there were the people who lived where all the dross was dumped, and the dross made them very unhappy. These poor people were not permitted to use the happiness machine. They complained to the happy people about their problems, but the happy people ignored their complaints. It was not long before the unhappy people began to protest more insistently about their situation. They demanded their fair share of happiness. The happy people turned a deaf ear to the protests, which only served to make the unhappy people angrier, and they protested all the more. And finally, the happy people could no longer ignore the protests. They used force to put down the protesters and arrested and jailed the leaders. I think that kind of sums up our reading this morning. I look out upon the previous year as a time when populations throughout the world railed against the happiness machine that fulfilled the happiness of only a few. Let's call it the global equivalent of the top 1%. And the rest of the world's people were mired in the dross dispensed by the privileged few. So all these people cried out, "Enough! Enough!" The Arab Spring launched protests first in Tunisia. We hear it referred to as the Arab Awakening. Now, perhaps we can understand it as an awakening to the dross that has alienated the poor and marginalized them. The masses of people who wish a fairer distribution of happiness are in turn suppressed by those who use the happiness machine exclusively for themselves. So this awakening, which took place in the year 2011 alone, spread to Egypt, Syria, Yemen, where thousands of civilians were killed. The awakening spread to Bahrain, Algeria, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, Lebanon, the Sudan, all met with violent responses by those happy people in power. It spread to Albania, Croatia, Spain, Greece, Uganda, the Maldives, China, Greece, France, England, and to Russia, where an op-ed piece just last week in the New York Times said, "Most Russians are sick of the corruption, misrule, and poverty that plagues their country, while the Kremlin elite feasts on the profits from oil and gas exports." Then it says, "And who can blame them?"